play this evening, and you've turned up in appropriate numbers. We thank you. My name is Kerry Finch, and I have been invited to moderate this evening. And we're going to be talking from Vaporware to Makerware. What does that even mean? As far as I can work out, and I worked this out all by myself, nobody had to tell me, it's about blue sky thinking, pulling it down from the sky, from the clouds, and turning it into things that we can make and do and use. Something touchy-feely and real compared to airy-fairy ideas that nobody does anything with. Is that vaguely what we're talking about?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay. That's what I'm going to be talking about. So tonight's event, from Vaporware to Makerware, is brought to us by Amsterdam. And they are a non-profit organisation, and they bring together, basically, app developers from around the world into a community of sorts, and their natural home, their natural hunting ground, and their habitat, and where they're most comfortable is the newly christened Dutch city of Amsterdam. So we're very pleased to welcome them this evening. Now then, what are we going to be talking about? Amsterdam has put together a small but perfectly formed panel. We can see these three charming funsters here this evening. And the panel promises us that they're going to have opinions. They may not be necessarily well-informed opinions, but they promise to be at least to have some opinions. We may be talking white kittens, we may be talking fashion models, we may be talking Makerware. I don't know. Who can say? What are we looking at? We have three speakers, and the guest speaker extraordinaire is sitting in the middle here, pouring himself a Coca-Cola.
Rum and Coke.
Rum and Coca-Cola.
It will make for a far more interesting panel.
Frankly, before I forget, housekeeping, bar at the back, beer and wine, drink much of it, because this is what is going to fuel the questions that are going to come from you guys. This is a help me, help you, help me, help you, help me, help you, Jerry Maguire moment. You need to ask questions. Please, what do you need to know? What opinions do you want to share? The panel are there to answer any question and discuss and form a heated debate. No questions too stupid, and if they are, I will answer them. And if you are too shy because you haven't drunk enough beer and wine to ask questions, then what you need to do is send a tweet, not to me, but to Vaporware. Vapor Maker, do spell it right, there's no E's in Vapor Maker. Don't let that catch you out. So please hashtag Vapor Maker, and we'll get comments and opinions and remarks and questions coming up on the screen. So you're allowed to play with your phones. Isn't that great? Who can live at that speed? So questions are going to come from you guys, and we want it to be a two-way street. It's very much important. Hi, thanks for joining. We have three panel members. First one is William Hurley, otherwise known as Hurley.
I like the way you said that.
Hurley, at Hurley is his Twitter address. And he's our guest of honor because he's been brought over by Amsterdam in collaboration with the City of Amsterdam, the Pakhuis de Zwijger, which is the business Department of Business Affairs, basically, because he's the recipient of an international award, which is only the second year in its realization. It's the International Genius Grant Award. So we're very privileged to have him in town for a whole week, ask questions about what he's been doing, because I'm not sure. He's a leading authority on open source, open innovation, augmented reality. He's even a Texan, and he's a Texan technologist. And
Whoa. Yeah. No, I'm from Austin, everyone. So Austin is not in Texas. It's just surrounded by it.
Texas, yeah.
Got it.
It's called unfortunate geography. It's
My
okay.
mistake, I'm sorry. So he's an Austin technologist and the co-founder of Chaotic Moon, which incubates and monetizes hardware, software innovation, basically. We also have Antoinette Hoes, who is the head of planning for Tribal DDB here in Amsterdam. And she's going to be providing some of the digital strategy and business perspective for the evening. She's hey, the clue's in the title. She's a strategic planner and a manager with a strong background in digital and business development. So she works on all sorts of international as well as Dutch brands like Centraal Beheer, Heineken, CNA, Ziggo, McDonald's.
Big money.
Money, it's all about the money. And
hello, friend.
I'm so happy they're getting on. Let's see if we can spill some blood on the carpets. And our third panelist is Daan Rozengaarde, and he has a social design lab called Studio Rozengaarde, and that is both in Rotterdam and obviously twinned with Shanghai. 2 locations.
And living in Amsterdam since 3 weeks.
And now living in Amsterdam. I mean, who can live at that speed?
Yeah.
So apparently you're good at what you do because you won awards from design awards from the Netherlands. You've won design awards from China. Your work has been exhibited in London at the V&A and at the Tate Modern, and even in the land of Japan. And you're going to be providing some kind of creative art, sustainability perspective this evening.
Great.
If you didn't know that, you know it now.
Yeah.
Think fast.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
So what we're going to do, I'm going to stop talking, and these guys are going to introduce themselves a bit better than I did, because I just made all of that up. It may not be true. And then we're going to start basically an open debate. And as I said, we really need questions from you guys so that we can keep the ball rolling. And it's not a successful evening until there is literally blood on the carpet. So bring it on. And remember, #VaporMaker. And there's beer at the back, as I said. And now I think it's time for you guys to introduce yourselves.
Yeah.
Whirly, maybe you can start because you're in the middle and you look cozy.
I don't know why the middle has to start. I thought it was ladies first, but she said no, and you said the middle. So I'll keep it very short. I don't really have a lot to say. First of all, I really want to thank the Amsterdam Foundation and the City of Amsterdam for bringing me over. It has been an incredible trip so far. I don't think that Shoshana and Dieter could have possibly packed any more meetings into every day, as well as Tara and John, who've been wonderful showing us around. I'm one of the co-founders of Chaotic Moon. We just do cool, innovative stuff, and I don't really pimp what we do a lot, or what I do when I talk on panels, but I'm really excited to be here because I see a kind of a relationship between Austin and Amsterdam, and a lot that can be beneficial to both cities, and I see the maker movement picking up a lot of momentum in both cities, so I'm just excited to be here and be on the panel.
Tell us a bit about the skateboard.
Yeah.
You have to explain.
I was purposely trying to avoid the skateboard.
I know, yeah.
Also, I have a mind control skateboard, which actually works. It's not a parlor trick. But that's, since you ask, it's it's a skateboard that goes 32 miles an hour. And it's we did one that was Kinect controlled called the Board of Awesomeness. And the next one was called the Board of Imagination, because you wear an EEG and you imagine where you want to go, and then it takes you there. At that speed, you can think about stopping and stop and think about going faster. And it's fun to ride.
Thank you.
Daan.
Yeah. As introduced, Daan Rozengaarde. I'm similar like you, a half artist, half architect, half entrepreneur, half inventor, working on a series of interactive landscapes, so to speak, varying from fashion, dresses which change in transparency when the wearer becomes more intimate with someone, to dance floors which generate electricity when you dance on it, to light artworks reacting to sounds and motion of people walking by, to a recent project we discussed earlier, smart highways, with a road manufacturer called Heijmans, thinking about how can we make roads more interactive and sustainable in a way. For example, producing paints which charge at daytime and give light at night, 5-6 hours glowing time. So you can skip away a lot of street lighting and things like that. But basically interested in how can we merge pragmatism with poetry, how can we update the world within today, And I think that's also the role of the artist or the designer, to come up with proposals of how we want our future to look like. I feel like a hippie with a business plan in that way somehow. Like you have a dream and an imagination, and on the other hand you have this technology which is sort of jumping out of that computer screen and becomes a part of our environment. And I think that's what I'm interested in tonight. I don't know about you guys, but how do we want our world to look like? And I'm not talking about Ray Kurzweil 100 years ago, but next year, or maybe even tomorrow, or maybe even tonight. Where this medium and message start to merge. Yeah. And it's about innovation, but also about imagination. Yeah.
And I think that's where I come in, Antoinette, working at Tribal DDB, an advertising or interactive advertising agency, and we like to make things that work or make that blue sky possible tomorrow, possibly even for mass markets. So that's not maybe the maker society that everyone here envisions when talking about open data, makers coming, from underneath and working their way upwards. We look at innovation and at these guys, and we think those are great ideas, and you could call it leeching or taking generous advantage of people going in front of us.
Or licensing.
You're licensing. And we try and take and make those things and make them feasible for brands. Brands with a lot of money, corporations with a lot of money, to make the world maybe a better place.
I thought we were the hackers, but you're doing it. Yeah.
So,
okay.
and I'm very happy to be here because I am born and raised in the city of Amsterdam. My grandfather was working on the printed press, which was then a very communist featured place of engagement. So the printing press came from what was down below. We're now talking about 3D printing. We're talking about apps. For my personal interest, I tweeted something. I hope some of you saw it. We think 3D printing will be big in sex toys, as it is something, it's like a personal thing. You have a maker at home when you can make things that you might not necessarily want to order from someone anywhere else. You might want to make it in your own home. So, as an opinion on 3D printing, I see wide use for that. One of the other questions, just to put it out there, was whether brands will still have a purpose when everybody makes stuff in their own home. Well, as soon as your homegrown things have the same status as a brand, I'd say yes. And before that, people will still pay the extra buck for the ease and the brand. And talking about apps, my personal interest is more in quantified self, e-health, and not in Ray Kurzweil. So that is a start.
By the way, both of them had said Ray Kurzweil and pointed at me. Yeah. And anybody who has
they don't know who you are.
Anybody who speaks know that I'm not a big fan of Ray or the Singularity. So just so you know, if you're anybody into the Singularity, now that we've all said that, good. So no one has to leave except for that one guy at the back.
Yeah, the one guy at the back. Sorry, you have to go now. Okay, well, thank you very much for your superb introductions. And now it's your turn. So what we would like to do is to kick off with some questions from you guys. So raise your hand if you've got questions immediately, or tweet them up there. You will be named and shamed and pointed out if you write bullshit, or if you write things that are going to make somebody cry. So, watch yourselves up there.
Or if you tweet questions, there's going to be people with mics in the audience. Be brave. Stand up and talk to us. None of us will bite you except for Antoinette.
Antoinette may bite. So who's got a question? Who wants to kick start? Oh, yes. We heart people in the front row.
I was very interested in the observation you made that, we talk all about innovation, and there's a lot of innovative things happening if you visit the right kind of events, I guess. But there's this whole mass market. And there, I think, is where the transformation needs to start. So I'd like to hear more on your take on that, and also about the gentlemen who said, oh, maybe we are not the hackers, but, we need the linking pins that bring ideas to the mass market.
Transformation does not start with us, but we do our best. We need those guys to make the world change in any kind of way. There was an interesting lady from the city of Amsterdam that I talked to about open data. where are you? She didn't want
Shoshana,
me to.
where are you?
Shoshana, where are you? And we talked about open data and about giving application developers the opportunity to play with the data and to make application. And I said, well, would you as easily give that data to me or to us and sort of like spread it among big corporations and have us have our way with it? And then she said, yes.
Tara has a microphone for you.
So just as to your point, whether we can do the same things as those guys are doing, there's different sort of circuits, different spheres where innovation takes place, and we don't all get the same toys to play with, and open data is one of those types of things maybe.
And your question was?
Her
Or your
quest-
comment was?
My comment was that the City of Amsterdam is working on the open data topic. We are recently involved in a European project which is working on opening the data. So hopefully it will be available soon.
So,
And Dan, the question in the front row the questioner was interested to hear what your perspective was.
yes.
Everybody should be aware of the fact that the City of Amsterdam has done a very good job of opening up data, and it's available to anybody. There's over 100 data sets available on opendata.amsterdam.nl.
Thank you for that. Back to what I was saying, which is, Dan, you wanted to hear from Dan
Yeah,
to answer the question.
I think, again, back to the hippie with a business plan. So what is interesting of today is that a lot of tech is out there. But in a way, it's not about that. It's sort of connecting it with an idea, which a vision is relevant within today. And I feel somehow, the high end and the low end, or the unique and the mass market, they are connected. In the same way as going to the NASA, the experience we had going there influences the way the pots and pans look like you have on your oven, on your stove tonight, or with fashion as well. The haute couture dresses, unwearable, super precious, but they push a certain vision and a sort of material expertise, which influences the 20 euro Hennes and Mauritz shirt. So this high end and low end, they have a weird relationship together. They cannot live without. So you have some people who push it, and some people who expand it. And I would not necessarily judge that as better or worse. It becomes interesting when they become part of an ecosystem and realize that. And that's what I lack a bit in the advertising and in the corporate world, in a way, that from day one as a young studio we were attacked or sort of jumped by. But the questions they were asked were very boring in a way. They always try to use it as decoration instead of really creating a dialogue and thinking about, hey, what is next? Can we co-create? How do we involve people with our idea, our brand, and the stuff that you're doing? Yeah. Yeah, it's about fear. It's about also a lack of imagination. But you see that changing more and more. That brands, in my opinion, go away from this logo thinking and open up a bit. And yeah, this can be good or bad. One has to negotiate. You have a corporate history.
Well, I think we should be specific. I bridge kind of both of your worlds, right? I went to work at large corporations for 3 years each, and I used it to kind of identify how to change those systems. I believe that to change a system, you have to be somewhat part of a system, and you have to participate. It's very easy to throw rocks at somebody else's glass house, but it's very hard to go in and actually try to change things based on the rules of the way that system works. Brands, to me at least, are made up of people. It's like Soylent Green. And because they're people, those people have imaginations. So brands have imaginations, but brands have a system of management that never lets that maybe get out, right? So we have to be very careful, because when we talk about brands and we talk about people, everybody always wants to distinguish them. And you and I agreed at dinner earlier on users, right? They're not users, they're people, you know? And so I think...
and what we share is an interest in telling stories, in a way, or
Exactly.
generating stories.
Precisely.
Let's put it like that.
And when you look at a narrative arc for an ad, for a brand, you run into a situation very quickly where the people take over, and people don't like risk. They don't like things that are new as much.
But that's
Some people
but
do,
that's interesting of
us.
today. An existing system is crashing. Like the road manufacturer, the Heijmans, which I'm working with now. Huge company, 9,000 people, shrinking market. China's coming, can do it €1 cheaper. They're like, we need to innovate. How do we do that? You know, and so then suddenly there's a lot of space for maneuver. But you're absolutely right. Something has to crash.
Well, desperation is the mother of innovation.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's hope there are other options as well, but maybe you're right. Yeah.
There's another question from the middle here.
Question here is, don't you see there's there's a big gap between hackers and corporations and brands and individuals, but due to the fact like open data, I mean, I was actually surprised, but because by the mere definition, the hacker has the same access as the big corporation because it's open by default. Mm-hmm. And so isn't that gap, isn't it actually shrinking compared to the previous situation where the data was closed and maybe only the corporation had it, or it was hidden somewhere where only hackers could touch it?
I think, looking at brands and corporation, that no one had it before. So it becoming open, is it becoming open to artists and to hackers and to corporations alike? What we do with it is the responsibility of us all. And I'd hope we do well with that, no matter where we start working on it.
Willie?
Well, I mean, I'm a corporation hacker, so I think the fact is open data is full of problems, and that means people see only the fear and the uncertainty and the doubt, and governments have an issue because they don't necessarily understand when it comes to this data the difference between control and influence and the importance of those two. When you control any system, then you strangle the life out of it eventually. When you learn to influence, you have to open yourself up to a lot more risk. People could take the data and find, oh, that economic plan was not as it was told in the press. Here's some, reporters love open data more than anybody, right? Because they want to go through all of that and find something or find some advantage. And then on the people side, you have some fear and uncertainty now too, because people don't want all of their data on their personal tax records or things like that opened. And so that feeds back into that excuse. And so the fear becomes the alpha and the omega, and the government uses the fact that they want to protect your privacy and stuff as another reason maybe to be real slow and cautious about opening the data. And the more they do that, it just feeds into itself. Eventually, all information wants to be free. People, want to have it. The problem with the hackers taking the information is that who will do more with it, corporations or hackers? It depends on the benefit they get from the use of the information.
And I think sometimes we overrate a bit the notion of open source information. The moment we open it up, something magical automatically happens. I think we should share stories and ideas, not software code so much. That won't do the trick. What I realize in the things that I've done is that the moment that I realize, and the people that I work with as a team of designers or whatever they are, we are in this weird relational network in which together you build up a sort of sum of qualities. And the moment you do something which is good, the general notion enhances. Then it becomes interesting. So one of the key things which I always try to do is somehow make people that feel that they are within this relational network of ideas and of interests, and then it starts floating.
Everyone?
Well, no. When you talk about specific project, or when you talk about a specific city in which you operate, so it's more about making people feel connected to a specific idea or a project than showing the source code. Yeah.
Well, I have to agree. I mean, I have a wealth of experience in open source. That's where I come from. Yeah. And if you take open source projects like Apache, which runs most of the world's web servers still, you end up seeing that there are millions of users and hundreds of thousands of people that could contribute, and tens of thousands of people that might contribute, and only maybe a few hundred or thousand that do, and then a very core group that makes it happen. And the point being is, with the open data issue that was brought up, is that the data being open without purpose is pointless. Yeah.
So
you have to have some use for it.
Let's get another question from the floor, and then you can slug it out again.
Hi. I actually want to reference the question, the topic that was just brought up. I've looked a little bit into open data, and it seems like more that they're just throwing a bone rather than getting to things that were integral to what's being done. How do you get the government to actually get more involved in giving data that's important? For example, one of the things that you can't get is the political agenda in The Hague, for example, is something that I would love to have, to know what's actually going to be voted on in the next, and it's going to influence my life, rather than how many parking spots or what cars are doing in the city. That's just my own opinion, but I'd like to get some response to that.
Antoinette?
Well, I don't know whether it would be in the interest of much of the brands and the companies, but the thing is that where the pouvoir is, I mean, where the power is and where the money is where you usually get a lot of answers. Funny enough, in this type of sphere, there was a Dutch project called at Sandberg at Media Fund. They kind of opened up a lot of data and managed a system to sort of have people in collaboration sort of sifting through that and getting out the real stuff, because the government won't give them the stuff that they want. So you have to like sift through with a mechanical Turks 10,000 and 10,000s of documents to find what you like. We might need to find ways like that to get what we need.
Let's move on from open data. I saw some tweets about sex toys and 3D printing. Who wants to get their teeth into that one?
I saw some tweets that Tribal is basically launching a product like that.
Apparently, I mean, I didn't want to hold Tribal DDB to it, but apparently, was that right, Antoinette?
No, that's my own line of toys. Thank you.
Yeah. So what up with the 3D printing and sex toys as a central focus? Anyone?
It was not my comment per se. It was someone else who mentioned that. It was retweeted by Tariq Karim, the guy who created NetVibes. And the notion is not so much about sex toys. The notion is about a 3D printer in your home makes it possible for you to have very personal things made. So not so much sex toys, which is like a nice thing to get your attention, but more, I'm an adult and I don't want to necessarily be beholden to anyone on what I would like to buy or make or have.
And I think that's interesting, that software becomes hardware again. So technology becomes tactile. And what I notice in for example, urban cities like Shanghai, is that they use technology in a way to become self-sufficient, to have their own information, their own energy, to learn more about food. And I was curious what you would think of it. So what happens when this tech jumps out of the computer screen, and what's the agenda? I see more and more that it gives people a certain sense of autonomy again, that they start copy-morphing instead of copy-pasting the world around them. And I think that's incredibly fascinating.
And I think if we're talking about communities of people around things, it might be around the creation of these types of things that cater to your specific tastes, or being just very personal and off the grid, or being very political and maybe not wanted in your country.
And what I really appreciate is that I don't believe in screens.
No.
I don't think they're relevant. I don't think they're interesting. I don't think it's really about interaction or control. So this is something I have in my brain. Like, how does Facebook Square look like, or Hive Square? How can we use tech to make things more tactile, but also really have some kind of physical interaction again, either sex toys or squares?
So instead of browsing that profile, you get the person.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
No, I mean, you bring up a good point. I think what happens, you ask a question, and you said, what happens when software becomes hardware, becomes tactile, and all this changes? And it's like 2001, right? Something wonderful, right? We don't know what, but this is very important for people to understand that you live in the greatest time ever as makers, as people who have ideas. Never before has there been such easy access to technology and hardware and being able to be creative. People who aren't creative now and just have ideas are able to take those ideas and make them into creations. It's incredibly powerful.
Let's take another question or comment from the floor.
Hi. I just wanted to point out about doing 3D printing on your home. It's not something that anyone can do, because you either print something someone else has made, or you need the skill to actually build it in 3D yourself so it can be printed. So it's not for everyone. It's like it's not for everyone to build an app for phone as well. It requires certain skills. That was one comment. I wanted to do one question, is what do you think is going to be the main source from innovation in the coming 2-3 years?
Well, I want to address your comment, and then I will leave the question to one of these two very smart
No,
people.
we're going to force you to answer it.
But on your comment, I think you may be looking at it from a different perspective. It's not necessarily right or wrong, but 3D printing is not for individuals, it's for communities. 3D printing is for a group of people where I can afford to have a 3D printer and Antoinette can do 3D modeling that I can't do, and we can collaborate, and you can bring all these amazing ideas and stuff to bear and integrate that stuff with other stuff. I mean, I think this is a communal process, not necessarily an individual one.
Or a commercial one where I am a brand or a big corporation and I can do that for other people.
I'm sorry, I forgot. What is your job again?
Second part of the question is also for you.
I forgot your question. No, I'm just kidding. What do I think? That was a joke. Come on, that was funny. Nobody thought that was funny.
If you were from Texas, we'd be laughing.
Did you think I actually forgot the question while I stall to remember it? No. What you said is very. I personally think in the next 3 years, and this ties into what you were saying, which I believe in a lot, that ambient interfaces and designs and things, getting rid of the screens. These are huge areas of innovation and to innovate within. I think that what we consider interfaces are not human interfaces. They're things that were brought over from the 70s and minor innovations and improvements on things that could be much better. I want to see a room where we walk in and it knows there's a presentation, and when we sit down there's a sensor and it knows that we should turn the mics on now because it's time and we're here and it started, and I want to see the highway that recharges the lights so that there's less energy usage, and these are all things that I see kind of in the ambient space and in an integrated space, and I think that's probably, for me at least, that's what I'll spend the next 3 years of my life trying to work on and forward.
And Dan, what are you going to spend the next 3 years of your life on?
I think the way we're experiencing information and we're consuming energy, that's going to sort of reshift enormously. And also what I find personally incredibly fascinating is that we're all talking about technology as is something alien, but of course it's not. Everything which we call technology is invented, is made by us, not so much to gadgetize, but to make our world more understandable. Yeah? So the kite is there to experience the landscape and the beach, and the wheels an extension of our feet more and more. So in a way, when I look at food, so I work with obsession, so I hop from fashion to highways to food. It's supernatural, at the same time something super artificial. What does this kind of technology buzz talk means in that, with when you talk about scarcity, but also when you talk about making yourself more human, or the duration, people getting older. There's an incredible field to be researched there, and in a weird way, the AXO and the DSM and the Unilever are not really doing it. They're optimizing an old system, and the artistic scene, in which I'm also part of, are still within a sort of niche statement zone making, including myself. So my job is to create that missing link, personally.
Yeah, I wouldn't know where the biggest change comes from, but I think the outcome will be somewhere for me in health, e-health, and taking care of your personal health. And then going back to Gibson, who wrote his stuff a very long time ago, I'm kind of worried that the outcome will be low tech for people who don't have the money and high tech for people who do. So looking at where the world is going to, these are things that I worry about. A bit less maybe the arty side of things.
Who's got another question from the floor? Otherwise I'm going to pick on Grammarware and find out what Grammarware has to say for themselves. Where's Grammarware? Is that you?
Oh, we see.
The front row is active tonight. God bless you.
What do you want me to say?
I'm interested in some of the things that you've been posting about.
Which ones? Well, I'm not sure. I've already tweeted everything that I wanted to say. So. Well, okay. So the last thing I was commenting, I was replying. I think I actually already sent a reply. But anyway, so someone said that paintbrushes already exist, but not everybody is a painter. So I agree that 3D will be for communities, not so much for individuals. So it's a nice thing to say. You know, the paintbrushes don't necessarily make everyone a painter, but still they probably increase the community of painters from people who could I don't know. Make a beautiful painting with their finger on the wall of the cave to a much bigger audience. And I mean, we're talking computers and software here, and the progress of software in the last, 5 decades or so have basically shifted the computers from, a bunch of nerds who were only allowed to use it in time frames and, do it with punch cards and very sophisticated technology even for them, to basically everyone.
Yeah.
So the same with 3D printing. It's or I don't know many of other technologies that we are introducing today. They not necessarily make everyone wonderful sex toy maker or a painter or whatever you want to become in your life.
But
I'm not sure which one of two are you, but well. They definitely give people opportunities to.
But
do so.
it's still medium, not message. And I think sometimes we sort of mess these things up because I notice that even I make that mistake sometimes myself. That because we moved from black and white television screens to LCD to plasma to 3D to HD TV screens, automatically assume that the television programs become better. Which is, of course, not the case. So these are different worlds. And I was wondering how you would see, because you lived in both of these worlds, what is the key to make sure that message and medium get merged?
That's a very interesting question. But I do want to comment on yours and some of your tweets, because they're very good. And I would encourage everybody else to start being more active in the tweets. This is what we want from this whole event.
Let's have a real conversation. Come on.
Well, it's fine. If he wants to tweet it instead of saying it, it's fine. But in the time the mic went around 3 times, he said like 15 things. But you made a good point. I don't actually disagree with you. I think there's a question of context. The availability of it to communities, as far as 3D printing goes, the cheaper it gets, the more widespread it gets. Access is a very powerful thing, and access to technology is a very powerful thing. But I also agree with something you said. Now, I'll put it a different way. In my opinion, as a technologist, you mentioned the software developers and everything. Technology has failed, and we as technologists have failed to do the one thing that was our charge, which is to eliminate complexity, which is to make things easier and simpler, and not have it where you have to go to a store at the course at the Apple store to learn if you're just an average person with no software and you're not tech savvy, to use your iPhone, right? The fact that you have to go to a class to learn how to use your Mac or anything, which is a very easy to use device, right? That should be shameful for everyone in technology. It's supposed to make people's lives easier.
Still, it's something you learn to use within hours, not within years.
Absolutely. I'm just looking for seconds, minutes, not hours.
Not everybody will have heard that, so can you just summarize what was just said, Hurley?
What I was saying is
what the guy asked.
What he just said.
Yeah.
He just said that it's a tool that you can learn, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, that you can still learn within hours. It's not a large learning curve, I believe, is the point that you were making.
And Antoinette, do you have an opinion on any of that?
You just said that we failed on, not we as software developers, software researchers, whatever, failed on eliminating complexity. Maybe so, but we've diminished complexity significantly.
Yeah.
Not good enough for me.
Well, sure, that means we still have somewhere to go. It doesn't mean that we failed.
Anyone? Or should we move on to something else?
Oh, I'm happy to keep talking about this if you want.
Go on then, but I'd like to hear from Antoinette.
Good.
No.
No, I just, that's why I'm saying the real conversation is that I feel we live in a state of schizophrenia. I think it's weird that somehow the physical world we live in, the cities, start looking more and more generic. The same Kruidvat, the same Hema, the same Zara. And it's a time where we share our emotions rather to something virtual. And so this is this weird state of in between. I think it would be super, super interesting to think about how we can connect that. And that happens the moment this technology becomes more tactile.
And we've got a question from the floor again.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about 3D printing. It will enable us to have this self-sufficiency in energy, food, and raw materials, but it also will allow us to create unique stuff. So not more like the brands we have.
Self-expression.
On the other hand, you talked about DSM. A few weeks ago, I gave a presentation for the DSM Innovation Awards, and believe me, they are actually co-creating this brand new world in the next 3 years. Maybe surprising, but it's not only small startups.
Good.
No, I've been to the DSM Innovation Program and I've seen that, and they're doing great things. But one more question. You say 3D printing will help us gain self-sufficiency. Why do you think that? I don't believe that at all.
Well, we need to gain some sorts of self-sufficiency.
Yeah, we need, but you said it will help us.
No,
how?
absolutely. We need it because our cities are growing, and we need to have transportless food, energy, and raw materials. There are lots of shortages in raw materials, energy, and food. So we have to create self-sustainable circles. And I think 3D printing will be the mindset to actually go out and create it.
How many people believe that in this audience, that 3D printing will help us kind of overcome shortages and scarcity and help the self-sufficiently in raw materials?
That's a show of hands.
Okay, just to
That's 3. Also, they brought you more drink.
4.
Apparently, we're not entertaining enough. Yes, exactly.
Antoinetta, can I ask? Can you wait for a second? Otherwise, no one can hear, and it gets really boring, and nobody wants to listen to you.
Don't assume.
You're
I've never been near marketing.
And so you have a bit of background in marketing as well, and you know how important supply chain management is. Imagine that you just could solve that problem by just moving things, and that could be,
I can imagine a load of things. I could imagine a load of things when I was 10 and read things, but now you're talking about the real possibility of 3D printing, and will it solve this problem? Do I think that is true within a short time frame? I personally do not, so I ask the question to the audience. Might it be true in a very much longer time frame? Maybe. I don't know, guys.
Well, I could pull a Ray Kurzweil here and make a prediction because, like Jules Verne, if I wait long enough, technology is advancing fast enough. Eventually, it'll be true. I just can't put a date on it. Yeah. But you make up a good point. But here's my concern with what you said. You talked about supply chain. And obviously, you could radically innovate around supply chain with 3D printing if it was in mass, right? And more reasonably, it won't be there's a 3D printer in every home. Although, hello, Meg Whitman at Hewitt Packard. If I were running HP, I would be building 3D printers because that's what I know, 2 years ago. It's more likely like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or somewhere, some form of a post office or whatever will have one that a community shares. Still, it could revolutionize it. Here's the problem. For me, and I'm very adamant about this, we must start thinking about whether we're eliminating complexity or transferring it. And so that, although it radically innovates on the supply chain, which is amazing, millions of dollars will be saved, it'll improve people's lives, these are all wonderful things. Absolutely, but it's not the elimination. Well, I'm going to question you on that in just a second. It's not the elimination complexity, it just transfers it from one place into another, right? Now, you just said more sustainable. I disagree because what you've seen in large-scale data centers is server sprawl, right? The easier it is to set up a server, the more servers there are. So VMware says, we're not going to eliminate complexity, we're going to transfer it into software. And then you have virtual server sprawl. So my concern is if there's a 3D printer in every home, I actually believe the waste and refuge problem created by such an event would be a dramatic impact on the planet and everything, because we can make it very easy to do things often will make it to where people will do them without necessarily thinking or thinking the implications. So now I print something and I don't really like the way it looks, or I break. I don't worry, my kids can break the toy. I can just throw that away and print 10 more today, right? And so that presents different problems that come out of that particular scenario.
Okay, let's move on to another question. And please, people, remember that if you have a question, there are lots of people who've already had their hand up. So please put your hand up and I will come to you. God bless you all.
Worley, you were kind of... Sorry.
Who's talking?
I am.
Oh, stand up or something, please.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the voice of God. It's like,
I'm sorry.
A Twitter voice. Finally.
Yes.
Yeah, finally. It's there.
So you just... you were saying before that we should make things simpler, which I think is more of a quality of a product than actually a purpose. It could be a purpose, but often actually what you want is not to make things simpler, but you want to empower people in a way that is as simple as possible.
Right.
So my question is, if the part of the goal of Makerware is empowering people, then what is the biggest challenge that we have at the moment or in the foreseeable future that we have to overcome to actually turn a consumer into somebody who is more engaged with their product or with machinery or with software? Like, what's the challenge?
So that's a great question, but I want to comment on something you said. You said that you saw it as a quality of a product, not a purpose. The purpose is for the designers and engineers of that product to eliminate that as much as possible, and that gets embodied, as a quality. But with what the challenges are, it's really simple. The cost will come down dramatically. The knowledge on how to print will be more and more out on the internet and easier. I mean, if you go to somewhere like Thingiverse, I don't have to have any 3D engineering capabilities. I can download, 3D models all day long of simple things I need or things I want to modify. I couldn't draw my way out of a paper box. But I think that it's about community. I think it's about attitude. If you are a large brand, they have a lot of learning to do with letting go and could benefit a lot from that. If you are an individual or artist or creator, there's a lot of letting go you could do of your views of large brands. And that's not to take the middle ground, that's to take to say my career has been based on working in larger companies and helping try to be an agent for transformation. And there's some that you can do that in, and there's some you can't. But for this whole movement to really take root, for this whole movement to actually be beneficial to mankind and some of the things that you've mentioned, which I agree with adamantly, there has to be a lot more freedom, not just to work together, but to make mistakes.
So what does craftsmanship mean in a time like that you describe?
That's a great question. Someone asked earlier in one of the speeches during the week, what happens when there's a craftsman who makes an item and now I can just download a model and I can print it, right? We've already seen in the lifespan of everyone in this room, things go away from technological things, right? We used to have VHS and beta cassettes, and then we had CDs and DVDs, and these are all things that, they disappear as we improve upon technologies. And improve is a questionable word. What about craftsmanship? I believe that it just goes somewhere else. I don't think
it gets distributed.
It gets distributed. Yeah. I don't think development of software is a science. I believe it is an art. And I believe I can prove that because you can download any SDK in the world and it says you do this and this and you get this result, and all the time you don't get that result. And sciences are things that are proven and repeatable and the results that are expected are the results received, right?
And
they're not experiments.
Do you have a perspective on this, or Antoinette?
No. I'm happy with the discussion.
Dan?
I agree.
Obviously, she's not drinking enough.
She's so not drinking enough. Dan, are you drinking enough?
No, he's right. I mean, the fun thing about starting this night with a dinner together is that we agree on quite a lot of things.
Let's take a question then from the floor.
Yeah, agreed.
So, there's tons of stuff you can do with 3D printers nowadays. Like, I've seen 3D printers that can print themselves, in essence. But also, computer vision is getting better and better and better and better. So, how realistic is it that you can actually take a couple of pictures of, say, a cup, obviously you can print instantly, But then electronics can come in. Like you can take a couple of pictures of an iPhone, download the electronics you need, and then you can basically print it on your own. Like, will that happen in the next 2 to 3 years? Or is that still science fiction? Because it sounds kind of plausible at some stage.
Well, we print circuitry at Chaotic Moon weekly. It's not a great process. It's not the most reliable process. I'm sure you have done that as well in some form in your work. Printed circuitry is something that's not there yet, but will get there. And when that happens, that's interesting because you have a 3D printer which can print a thing or a series of things. We don't have a 3D assembler, right? So to get to the vision you just laid out, there's an opportunity there to say, okay, if these are distributed and people are printing all of these different things, can we have a machine that not only can print them, but that can assemble them, right? My mother is never going to assemble an iPhone. I work on making sure she can turn it on and check her email. But you know, there's an opportunity there. Will that happen in the future? Yeah. I think it's a distant future, personally, but I think it's a great, wonderful thing for people to be researching and thinking about.
And when you talk about this notion of co-creation, because you put a lot of power in the individual, don't you think there's certain specific type of countries who are more, how do you say it, suitable for this kind of mentality than other countries?
China calling,
for example. Yeah, no, but isn't it a very Western approach?
1 second, I'm getting a call from China.
Isn't it a very Western approach of how we want to build up reality?
I don't know that my approach is. So that's an interesting question because I understand where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from, but there are many people that I'd have to deal with on a daily and weekly basis who don't even think that's a Western approach, right? They think it's they're like, whoa.
I'm aware I'm speaking
you're
cliché
like
now.
Yeah,
I'm aware I'm speaking cliché.
You're a technology socialist or something.
Yeah.
But so and the answer is no. I think that what I've seen in Amsterdam, in Nepal, and India, and Russia, and America, and everywhere that we're doing different things, I find that all those people look a lot the same, you know? And I can go into a community like Amsterdam that I've never been to.
A community of makers, a community of designers, a community of artists, a community of developers.
So let's say city.
Anyone.
Yeah, and I can find all of those people that are like-minded. We're attracted to each other, right? We find each other. We find ways to get around.
But you're talking about generic city.
I'm still wondering.
But what I'm saying is, you said, is it a Western thing? I think no, it's an everywhere thing. I think there's people everywhere in every culture and every geopolitical culture who believe the way I do and the way you do, and we find each other.
And who have who had the opportunity to learn how to use tools, to go to school and to do different things. I mean, you're talking about communities of makers.
But I feel like I'm in a Disney movie now. Like I'm looking for the specific points, not the generic points.
But let's talk about that. You just threw out a gauntlet, and the gauntlet is education and access to information. Okay.
Yes.
I never went to college. I barely graduated high school. I had no access to information, no opportunity to have the career I've had. That did not stop me. So what does that make me in your view of the world?
No, not a discussion for here.
Let's take another question.
All right. I guess I'm very curious about the possibly legal and ethical implications of some of the things that are happening now. So somebody tweeted about, I guess, like being able to print weapons, and also there is maybe in a more distant future there is a possibility of 3D printing or somehow otherwise making medical devices possible that you could create at home. So if you run into a situation when something hurts you, so like I guess like what does that mean? And I guess like one of the questions in a separate field, the self-driving cars. If a car gets in an accident, whose fault is it? Is it the software? Is it the manufacturer of the car? Or is it the person who decided to get this car?
Or the road. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or the road's fault.
I think a lawyer would tell you all of those people bear some responsibility, and they can tell you the exact dollar amount of that responsibility. No, I just want to, you bring up, I think the question you're referring to on the Twitter is the question about the guns and the weapons is very interesting. That company that does that is in Austin. They're called Defense Distributed. Their argument is actually that they will make things safer because they're not building guns that shoot a lot of bullets. They're building defensive systems that shoot once and can't be reused afterwards or whatever. I don't agree with that. But it's something that's a very big topic for me, and I'd love to know your opinion especially, which is laws. Technology finds a way to make almost everything obsolete. If you listen to Ray Kurzweil, humans will be obsolete. But it makes laws, it really changes the speed of the law and the speed of laws are developed and everything. Because how can you have a gun law if someone could just download a 3D model and build a functional gun? These guys took, and the only part that's governed in the US by alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and they printed it, and they shot 200 or 300 rounds through it, just to prove that, it's a plastic mechanism would work. So it's a very interesting question. And I think that the question we have to ask is, do we now have to demand more of the legal system, particularly, to move faster or not?
No. We have to demand more of us. Sorry. And of no one else.
Yeah.
And it's opportunity, and it's also a lot of risk. And we can't put that out to anyone else. I don't want to be an adult in society and be restrained from all the opportunities that are there, because possibly there's risk and possibly there's harmful behavior or intent. So I would really, really, really appreciate the Makerware movement, if such a thing exists, not only to focus on making this and focus on creating this, but focus on keeping a very open eye in making all these things available to everyone.
And more transparent.
In itself, these things do no harm to anyone, and any adult, I think, can have his or her own poison and life. Dan?
Amen. Yeah.
Okay, let's take one question from over here. Yes, you have to stand so they know where you are. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's becoming a really interesting discussion right now. What I wanted to ask is, like you said, people are becoming more and more obsolete. And you said you think like, not because I understand it.
We said Ray Kurzweil said people are becoming more and more obsolete.
Yeah, I understood it like this. We innovate and we build companies and we make our life more easier with all this software we write and with all this hardware we write. So, like, we can replace now 100 people with one machine, and the machine is still even faster. Yeah. Then on the same time, she said, like, okay, not at the same time.
Antoinette.
But then Antoinette said that she doesn't want to be afraid of the future and of innovation because some people could do harm with it. And then I thought, like, okay, but we make so much people obsolete, so they don't have income anymore, they get angry, we put them into ghettos or whatever, and then we leave them there. Yeah, and we live in our fairy tale world with all this cool technology, and then we end up like these guys in WALL-E, which cannot even walk anymore because they fly on the bed all the time. I am wondering, like, the question. The question is like,
are you telling a story or are you asking a question? Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
No. You say we could end up like the.
We've got 3 minutes left. We did have 6. Now we got 3.
You could say that we end up like the people like WALL-E, or you could say that we end up in the people like Star Trek. I don't know that either of those appeal to me, but in Ray Bradbury's world, there was no need for money, so people bettered themselves. They learned music and art and spent time doing all of these things and growing both individually and as humanity. So, I think we'd be hard pressed to determine which one of those two types of fate would be the outcome.
Yeah.
Either you take the money and run, or we take our chances with the crowd that we're with.
Let's take one more question.
There's one right here in the front row. Oh.
I actually have a question. It's a feedback. Will the maker movement and the technology and the tools available be the first real opportunity for women to really break into the technology mainstream?
So, Whirly,
yes.
As our token woman, what's your opinion of that?
No, yes. Yes. As a woman, which many of you may not know, I'm horribly unattractive, but I've made do. No, that's a great question. So I have an issue and take issue with the fact that there are not more women in technology. it's a big problem. It's a problem for me hiring, because just as a component of diversity in the system model I'm trying to build, it limits me severely, right? But if you look at all of the things that were made, I mean, I'll say this, a tweetable: women are the original makers, right? In so many ways and forms.
Easy
and
way
so
out.
it's not an easy way out. It's, you know, women have made textiles and have made all of these different things, you know, and men were hunter-gatherers, and, you know, women were making a lot of these things. And so I think that 3D printing should be seen as very, very empowering for everyone, but especially for people who have been potentially limited because of the if you will, sexism or whatever in the technology industry.
1 second. What does this new technology bring that makes women more placed to profit?
It doesn't. Technology is the great equalizer, and so it levels a playing field of things to where they don't need to go and ask. They can form ideas, and they can build those ideas much easier. I work with a lot of startups in the US, and a lot of them are women startups. And the number one problem I have is they always have to, there's always a male partner, there's always a reason that they can't do this or that, or they don't have this or that. And since I've introduced into that maker scene a lot of them to 3D printing, they have become very, very vibrant part of that community. And I would argue to say that as a general rule, they are probably more creative and more apt to make.
I'd love to hear
and I think that the fact that you're absolutely right, that there are so few women in the technology world, either it's coding or development, means for me that the technology is just not intuitive enough in a way. You know, that it's too rough in a way to handle.
So
and now you can comment.
I think we should get Antoinette to answer the question
That
now.
was the last part.
Come on, come on. You wanted to see blood, now you get it.
Antoinette, you can't walk away from the question. We want to hear from you now.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to go into this argument. This is.
It's not an argument. It was a legitimate
question.
question. I think it's an interesting question. Tara, can you just paraphrase what your question was?
Will the maker movement and the technology in 3D printing...
As the guys translated it, will tech, if it becomes more intuitive, be more easily usable to like children, people with limited...
No. I would...
No, okay.
No.
That's
Unfortunately, that's not what I said.
But
okay,
sorry,
so what's your opinion, Antoinette? What's your opinion?
Yeah.
I think that it might, just because it doesn't scare a lot of people as much. So if it becomes more tactile, it becomes more feasible. It becomes a movement from the ground up. I would dearly love it to be differently, but it won't be. So I have to concede that they're right, but I hate them for it, and the world as well.
Right, and we have time for one
I think we need to hug it out.
You need to hug it out. We need all blood on the carpet, one or the other. We have time for one more question, so this better be a really shit-hot, kick-ass, freaking brilliant question. No pressure.
And not about open data.
It's not about open data. I mean, there's a lot of similarities now between the hopes for 3D printing and apps, and it was once surrounded by the internet, of the web, cyberspace, whatever it was called back then. Now the internet is more surrounded by Facebook privacy, hackers, stealing credit cards, and most of the hopes and dreams that dominated the early press about the internet have gone. For me, it's very feasible to see a world where 3D printing, the kid who prints his 3D gun and shoots half the school, or women who are savagely done whatever things to by brutal men, or are I mean that world. I mean that world is not very that world is not very far off. I mean, do you guys see that all the positive hype that's surrounding now will turn into the same positive press that people are thinking about the internet when they think about Facebook right now.
Sure it will, and you know what? Everything you said will happen, and people will use 3D printers to steal brands' property and reprint them, and they will sell them, and everything will have all of that outcome that you said, because it has nothing to do with the internet or with 3D printing or the governance of either. It has to do with you and I as people.
Yes, it's
People are people and are people. And we will choose to use those technologies in a way to steal credit cards, or in a way to steal designs, in a way to make money, in a way to fight against people who make money, whatever the case may be. These things are all possible outcomes, and therefore will all probably happen. But it's important to know that that's because we have to stay vigilant on a focus of humanity and who we are, and understand our limitations and our whatever weird need to destroy ourselves, or have all of these situations you said, and steal and cheat and lie.
But the good thing is that you open up this conversation
Exactly.
more and more, and that's the part that I like about it. That it becomes a more an open system in terms of open conversation and open stories.
And as an open system and as open stories, we can see all of that, and in my opinion, change all of that.
Not only a system of conversation, but a system of responsibility for all of you, as for us, really.
Nice finishing line. So, I just want to say, thank you so much for all your very good questions. Some very comedy, and none of the tweets made anybody cry. Maybe people will go home and shed a tear.
That's not true. I thought I saw him shed a tear.
I saw him shed a tear.
But I want to thank Dan and Willy and Antoinette, and thank you guys for all turning up. Remember, drink beer, drink wine. It helps a lot of things. And thank you to Amsterdam and Pakhuis de Zwijger for putting on such a great event. So thank you, everybody. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Cheers.